that says, come and take a workshop with me and your life is going to be fucking perfect and great. I don't fucking believe in that. But there's a lot of people out there that are over promising. And I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus, and I'm not trying to say anybody's doing anything harmful or bad. But what I do believe is that we need more courageous people on the planet who are willing to sit down and say, hey, I'm not going to fix your fucking life. But you know what? If we sit down and we talk this through and we hold our hearts and we feel our emotions and you learn how to listen to your thoughts and you sit with it long enough, you know what? You're going to feel a little bit better today. And then tomorrow you're going to do it again and you're going to feel a little bit better and a little bit better. And then something in life is going to happen and it's going to hit you like a motherfucking bus. And it's going to feel like that bus ran you over. And some days it's going to feel like the bus ran you over and then came back and fucking backed over you again. And that, to me, is the truth of life. But I've lost a lot of people in my life because a lot of people in my life have told me, don't fucking tell people that. Don't tell people that. You tell people about what a good healer you are. You tell people about the great sessions that you've done. You tell people about the things in your life you've overcome and that you've healed. You don't fucking tell them that you still have problems, because then you look weak. And I had people in my life that are like, I want to share the joy and I want to share the fun. And like I said, I want to share the wins. And I've always been in this space of, I don't think that's fucking honest. Like, it just didn't feel right to me to lie when I'm running workshops around the world or around, Canada. And yeah, when I run those workshops, I feel so held by the divine, and things are so great. And I have these times throughout my days, almost every single fucking day, where I feel so grateful and so aligned with the divine and so in purpose and so in this space where I believe that everything is happening for a reason. But I also have fucking fear, and I also get sad, and I also feel lonely throughout the day. So, unless I'm just not good at what I do, I actually feel like I'm human, like every other person on the planet. And I guess I'm the person who's got the courage to sit down and say, hey, I don't feel like I've got all my shit together. I feel like I'm really doing well in some areas of my life. Like, the one that I like to talk about the most is my fucking parenting. Because I struggled and I struggled and I struggled as a mom. I struggled since the day I wanted to have kids so badly. I had a very hard time getting pregnant. It was the energy system that I found that actually healed my body, my mind, my heart, whatever it needed in order to get pregnant. But seriously, as soon as I had this baby, I was like, why the fuck is he crying all the time? I was not expecting to not have sleep. I was not expecting to have a baby that screamed and screamed and screamed. I don't know, was it colic? That's what they say. Whatever the hell it was so hard. And I ended up having postpartum depression, which was so hard because nobody tells you that there's going to be a time. Actually, to be honest, I had watched enough Oprah over the years that I had heard stories about women who had gone through postpartum depression, that I knew kind of what was going on. When you have thoughts that I just want to put this kid in the crib, pack my fucking bags, and drive away and never come home. That is a very It's a very scary thought to have as a mom, because you wanted these little beings so badly, and then when you get them, you get so overwhelmed and so whatever it is that postpartum depression does to us, that you're seriously thinking that you could leave them and not come home again. That's a very scary thing. So I went through that, and interestingly, when I did get pregnant, I realized through my pregnancy that I was married to someone that didn't love me. And how fucking hard was that? And I'm not sitting here to say my story is harder than anybody else's, because I don't believe my story is harder than anybody else's. I believe we all have these fucking stories to share, but we're all, we're just all so afraid to say that we're not okay. So we all just fucking push through. And push through. And, this is so interesting, because I've been working out for the last 19 years. Like I said, I started energy medicine. I don't know if I even shared this. I found an energy medicine system in 2007. I had been dealing with chronic, oh, my light just died. Chronic abdominal pain for years. And I was on Tylenol 3s every day because the pain was just so bad. And Tylenol 3s, if you take them every day, they're not good for you. And I was dealing with those issues also. But somebody had told me about this energy medicine system. And at the time, I was a computer programmer. So, seriously, I didn't fucking believe in any of that shit. I had never even heard the word intuition, let alone natural healing. My sister had had a really severe cancer when she was in, what grade was she? The end of grade 11. It was the end of grade 12 for me. And she got Hodgkin's lymphoma, and it was stage 3C, which is almost the worst you can get. And she went through hell, which is very interesting because, then in 2018 when I was diagnosed with cancer, mine was non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So, but anyway, we didn't try anything natural because we didn't even know that there was anything natural to try. We went straight to the doctors and did whatever they said, and luckily she survived. But I'm hearing about this healing system, and I'm like, what the fuck is this? But because the person that I had talked to was, my mother-in-law, who doesn't lie, and she had really bad migraines, and she said that this system helped her heal her migraines. And I was like, you know what, at this point, I'm ready to fucking try anything. I wanted desperately to get pregnant. We had been trying for probably a year and a half, over a year. And I was just tired of being in pain every single day. So I tried a session, and it was so interesting because when I called the girl to book a session, she was talking about what she did. And I was like, okay, here I am, a computer programmer. Everything needs a scientific answer with me. Like I said, didn't even know that the word intuition was a thing. And she's talking, but she's talking from this place of not weird. It wasn't weird. It didn't seem weird. It seemed so real. She had been going to medical school, and she dropped out of medical school to do energy work when she was going through her own cancer journey. And I was like, wow. Anyway, I went for a session, and basically what she did through the session was tell me things that I didn't know about myself, things that nobody else knew, and basically was telling me all the reasons that I was so afraid to be a mom. And when I left that session, I was partially excited that maybe there was more in the world than what I believed to be true. I actually signed up for her 4-day workshop before I left because I just wanted to see, is there something to this? And the other part of me wanted to prove that she was fucking crazy because she barely even touched me, and now she's telling me that maybe she healed me. And I woke up the next morning and all my pain was gone. Like, all my pain was gone, never came back. And so I dove into that system. I took that 4-day workshop. And like I said, I had never heard the word intuition before. And here I am, like, knowing things about people that I would have never known intuitively, and healing people through these 4 days. And I was like, what the fuck is happening here? It was so magical and it was so powerful, but it was so spiritual also, because I had been a Catholic, you know, through the years, and not like a serious, you know, devoted practicing Catholic, but there was always, I always had a belief in God and a connection to God, and I was always afraid of doing something that wasn't of God or with God. But this system wasn't that. It wasn't anti-God or weird or witchy or anything like that. It was just really amazing. So I quit my full-time job after that 4-day workshop and just dove in. And really dove in to learn everything that I possibly could about the body, about the mind, about quantum physics, about Chinese medicine, Eastern medicine, Western medicine, everything that I possibly could. And, you know, then in 2018, I ended up getting cancer for the first time. Like I said, I was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. It was about 25 years after my sister had Hodgkin's lymphoma. So I know I'm like totally jumping all over the place because I was talking about parenting and now I'm talking about cancer. But my point is, what I've been doing through these years is really, so going through cancer and through my parenting journey and everything else that I've gone through has taught me how to face challenges. How does it work? Does God put us through challenges for a purpose? I believe so. I talked to a lady, I did a podcast with her today. She doesn't believe that. And you know what? I think the beautiful thing is we all get to believe what, I don't know why this is making me emotional, but we all get to believe in our version of what God is, how the divine works. There are people in my life that do not believe that there is anything. And that's okay too. My job is not to prove to people that my way is a better way. And I'm also not the person who's going to allow someone else to tell me that their way is a better way. I really truly believe that we're all going through this journey and we're finding versions of the divine love, and it's our job to connect to that. And that's what I'm starting to do. I'm doing my podcast again, talking about life. I've got my beautiful friends that come on. Today I did a podcast with, her name's Joanna Vendel, and she actually, she is the CEO and the founder of something called the prestigious International Hope Book Awards. And what she does is she awards authors for their work, for authors that are writing books about hope. And interestingly enough, I just happened to come across her work and she had me on her podcast, and I ended up submitting 3 of my books. I've written 12 books through the years, through my cancer journeys. I submitted 3 of my books and they all won awards. Like, I won 2 awards for the first one, and then an award for my children's book. This is the first book I ever wrote. It was before my cancer journey. And then I wrote this one last year, Finding Peace for Teens and Young Adults. And I actually then created a version and I called it Finding Peace for Parents. And then there's Finding Peace When Life Falls Apart. But they're all basically the same book, but the journal exercises are a little bit more geared And then the beginning story is a little bit different, because the one, Finding Peace When Life Falls Apart, is more about my journey and what I've gone through. And so then the other book that I won an award for, it's called The Other Side of Fuckery. Because if you stick around and you spend more time with me, you'll see that the word fuck is probably my favorite word. So anyway, I submitted these books and won these awards. And so I did this podcast with the lady today, and we were talking about the importance of spreading hope. And I guess this is kind of tying everything together that I'm saying. I feel like it's so important for us to stop pretending that things are okay when they're not. A lot of people complain way too fucking much, and that's annoying. Those people need to stop. But we also need to start to, distance ourselves from those people. I happen to actually fucking love TikTok because I am seeing so many people on TikTok making videos about how scared they are, how sad they are, how their journey is. And I'm like, what the fuck? I did not think that that's what TikTok was about. So I love that. I've really stopped watching anything about the news because I can't handle it. I don't want to know the stuff that's going on out there, because I truly believe that everything that we're seeing in the world is a reflection of what we're collectively holding. I call it the heart of humanity. And when we see darkness out there, our job, I believe, I could be so fucking wrong about everything that I'm saying, but what I do believe is it's our job to search our hearts and be like, where am I at war? And where, one of the big ones that I actually really sat with is child trafficking. I mean, I'm not going to go down any rabbit holes, but I had a really, really, really hard time knowing certain things that are happening because it's so dark and it's so disturbing. But what I realized is, okay, it's dark and it's disturbing and there's nothing I can do about it. Sitting here in my home, me worrying, me freaking out, me being upset, that's not helping the situation. But what if I really looked into this? And what if I saw where I was hurting my own inner child? And when I started to see that, I was like, holy fuck. No wonder we're seeing this on a global scale, because so many people have been hurting their own inner child. And again, I could be wrong about this. I'm never sitting down to try to be right about anything. But what if we start to look at things from a different perspective? And what if we started to look at things from this way of, Jesus, if we see it out there and we go within and we can start to heal these parts of ourselves that are hurting our own inner child. A lot of people we hurt ourselves in so many different ways. We sell our soul for money. We sell our soul for, like we do so many things that hurt us and harm us. And is that why it's being reflected in the world? I don't know. But all I ever come to, the only answer that ever shows up for me is, it's all an inside job. And let's work out our own shit before we get overtaken and overcome by the world's shit. Right? So anyway, I'm starting to do this podcast, so that's what I was starting to say. I made a podcast today with, it's on YouTube, this beautiful lady, Johanna Vendel, who's got these prestigious International Hope Book Awards. Every person in her family has died. Her parents died. I think it was 3 or 4 siblings, they're all gone. They've all died. And she decided to use that grief and turn that pain into a purpose. And now she's got these Hope Awards. That's why I was saying I submitted my books and won awards I won 2 awards for The Other Side of Fuckery and then 1 award for each of the other books. It's a beautiful thing that she's doing. And today, she actually launched a magazine. I can't remember what it's called, but I've got it on my phone somewhere. If you go to her page on Facebook, it's Johanna Vendel, or the prestigious International Hope Book Awards. She also has a page, and it will show you where the magazine is as well. She's doing such amazing things. So I worked with her, or I sat down and had a conversation with her today, and we were talking about the importance of sharing our stories, but not sharing our stories, like I said, just the wins. This book that I wrote, I've actually written 12 books, like I said, through my cancer journeys. I needed to write because I didn't know what else I was going to fucking do. I literally felt like I was losing my fucking mind. I was so upset. I was so afraid. And every time I would sit down and write, it's like I would write out all the crazy shit that was in my head, all my fears, everything that was making me so angry. Like, why the fuck is this happening to me? And when I would write it out, it's like I would get all of the crazy shit out of my mind, and then I would feel my heart open. And it really became a thing. And that's why, you know, when I talk to people, and I like I said, I'm going to do these podcasts, I'm going to do workshops, I'm going to do these videos, I'm going to start these TikTok lives, even though I don't even know what the fuck I'm doing on here. Because I want people to really start to understand how important it is to express ourselves. You don't have to go and tell the world your problems, but if you don't have someone you trust, why not write it out? You know, and these are the things that I'm talking about. I know I'm just like talking in circles because I have so many things to say, but like expressing ourselves is so important. And so that's what writing became for me, is just really noticing that, holy fuck, if I let it out and just be totally fucking honest and not try to censor it. I never wrote books thinking I was writing a book. I would just sit down and like blog it out. And then at some point I was like, maybe I should actually turn this into a book. The first couple books were different. It wasn't my life story, so it was different. But after my first cancer journey, I was diagnosed with severe depression and severe anxiety. I had rang the bell at the cancer clinic December 14th, 2018, which meant there were no more doctors. There were no more nurses. I have to say, even though I am an intuitive healer and I really believe in energy medicine and natural healing, nothing that I was doing worked for me. I needed to go through the system. I needed 3 rounds of chemo. I needed 20 rounds of radiation. I needed the surgery. And I have to say, every single doctor and every single nurse that I came into contact with was so fucking amazing. So I feel like going through a cancer journey and having to be at the hands of the medical system was a really powerful growth for me, because I got to really appreciate nurses and what they do and how fucking beautiful they are, and doctors and the whole system. You know, it was just really, really incredible for me. It was very humbling for me because I had worked with clients that had way worse cancers than I did, and they healed naturally. Yet here I am with, you know, I think it was only stage 1, but I needed the chemo, and the chemo is actually what almost killed me. You know, my liver enzymes got very, very high, which meant I wasn't able to get chemo anymore. But then I had a prayer circle at the church, and the next day I went for a blood test and my enzymes were level again, which was a miraculous healing. So I got my miracles in different ways through that cancer journey. And so when I rang the bell, after thinking I almost died a few times, probably 2 or 3 times, I really, really believed that I was dying because the chemo just really knocked me out, made me so sick, and my body was fighting it too. And then when I rang the bell at the cancer clinic, I also had some issues with things that I was hearing at church. I started church at the beginning of 2018, and I was diagnosed with cancer in July of 2018. So it was a really interesting year. Thank God I had been going to church because I had this church family to really help me. But then as I dove deeper into the questions that I had about the Bible and about Jesus, I didn't like the things that I was being told. And so when I rang the bell at the cancer clinic, I also called one of the ladies from church that night and said I was leaving the church. So I'm like, well, now I'm really fucking alone here. I'm alone, and I just have no fucking clue what to do. And so I went to the doctor, and I was depressed, or diagnosed with severe depression and severe anxiety. Of course I was. But I told him I don't want medication this time. I had been dealing with depression and anxiety my whole adult life. I was on again, off again medication. See, what happened was I was on antidepressants, and when I started the chemo, they took me off of those antidepressants and put me on something else, and I didn't like the other thing that they put me on. So I just stopped my antidepressants, which probably wasn't a good idea. Anyway, so when I went to the doctor, I said, I really want to do this. And he said, I'm really proud of you for wanting to figure out what's causing this. And I'm not saying, I am not a doctor. I am not telling anybody to quit their medication. But what I do have to say is I believe that there are probably a lot of people that have depression because of what we're doing in our lives, the thoughts that we're thinking, the things that we're afraid of. I really truly believe that a lot of mental health issues could be healed naturally by feeling our emotions, noticing our thoughts, and to me, the most important part is having a divine connection and really connecting to whatever that higher power is. Everybody's totally different. And like I said, I would never tell anybody to stop taking their medication, but what I would tell people is, why don't we try this? Why don't we try to feel our emotions? Why don't we try to listen to our thoughts? Why don't we try to align with the divine and see how much better we can feel naturally? And at some point, we might get to a point where we don't need certain things. That's just what I'm here to say. I don't know if that's right or wrong. But that's what happened for me. So I recognized at the time that I was very, very suicidal. I had some very mean voices in my mind for so many years, and they were always daring me to take my life. Always. And they were always telling me why I should take my life. My kids would be better off without me. I was better off dead. I was a failure. The part of the story that I didn't actually share yet was in 2015, I left my marriage. And my kids were 4 and 5 at the time. And that just fucking broke me. I felt like my heart was shattered into pieces. And so, I was trying to learn how to be a mom. I had a lot of emotional, mental issues. I had been suffering from fucking depression and anxiety my whole adult life, probably longer without even noticing it, right? Like, I don't think we're just depressed at some point in our lives. I think we probably had the issue longer. But I'm trying to parent these kids now on my own. Obviously not getting along with my ex-husband and dealing with those issues. And then getting diagnosed with cancer. What the fuck? Like, seriously, what the fuck? It was so hard. It was just so incredibly hard. And so there was that, right? Like there was just so much. And so then by that point, I just had all of these voices of what a failure I was. And like I said, how I was better off dead. And so I really was afraid. I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to stop myself from taking my own life. And so what I did was I packed my bag and I decided that I was going to go to a mental hospital. I didn't know what kind of a mental facility we had here, but I just knew I needed somebody's help to keep me alive. And so I packed my bag and I sat down and I just cried, the deepest cry I think I've ever cried, because the truth that showed up, and it's interesting because my brain blocked this out for years. I was making a video a few months ago and all of a sudden this awareness showed up and I was like, holy fuck, I totally blocked that out. But what I realized was I didn't have a good relationship with my ex-husband. I'm not going to say too much about it, but I knew that if I checked myself into a mental hospital, that probably meant I would lose my kids. That somebody would take my kids away from me. And that was the most heart-wrenching thing that a mom could ever... No, I'm not going to say that. I don't like the always and never words. Sometimes I tend to use the black and white terminology. I've always been a very black and white person. And I'm trying very hard to be like, it's not the worst thing, but it's one of the worst things that a mom could ever feel. And so I was sitting and coming to terms with what all of this meant. And like I said, there were all these mean and nasty, crazy voices. And all of a sudden there was this tiny little voice that spoke up and it said, there's another way. And it's interesting because as soon as I heard that voice, I knew what it meant. I knew it was my inner voice. I knew it was, the divine speaking to me, through me. And I knew that meant it's time to do your fucking work here. Like, it's time to figure your shit out. I had been living a very addicted life. I was addicted to dating and everything that came with it. I was always looking for love in all the wrong fucking places. I, started drinking heavily, smoking after I left my marriage. There was always some addiction. There was always something I was running to or running from. And what I've written in my books through the years is what you run from and what you run to runs you. And I was being run by a whole bunch of things. And so when I heard that voice, I was like, holy fuck, okay, I get it. I'm going to do my work. And remember, since 2007, so that would have been 11 years, I had been working as an intuitive healer, which meant I was on a spiritual journey already. I was, aligning with the divine and healing my inner wounds and belief systems and fears. And this was like, yep, now it's time to really do this. So what I did, instead of going to the mental hospital, was I drove to another city and stayed in a hotel that I really love. And that's where my work began. Actually, a really big part of this story too is when I was sitting on the couch and I heard that voice. After I realized, okay, I'm going to dig in and I'm going to do my work and see what happens, I also got this download to listen to conversations with God. And I'm like, I just left the fucking church. The last thing I want to do is read a book about God. No, thank you. But it was such a strong download. I was like, okay, well, I'm going to download the audiobook and listen to it on the way and see what happens. Well, that book changed my life. That book changed my life. It's so powerful. And it was everything that I had been feeling about God that I wasn't hearing in the church. I was hearing the exact opposite, and I didn't ever feel like it was truth. But this book was telling me what I was actually feeling was not crazy. And nobody's ever going to know who God is, how it works. But to me, when it's based in fear, it's not helpful. So when it's based in love and expansion, to me, that is divine unfoldment, and that's what I want in my life, and that's what makes me feel better. That's what makes me feel alive. And that's what that book did, is really showed the beauty of the divine. And so when I went to the hotel room, I just made this plan. It's like, okay, I had been meditating since 2016 for an hour a day, kind of lost track of that practice. I was like, I'm going to get in the tub every morning first thing. I'm going to meditate for an hour. And then I'm going to go outside. And it was really fucking cold because in Saskatchewan it gets very, very cold. It was like minus 45, 50 with the wind chill. But I got into my van every morning and I drove to the riverbank and I walked and I cried and I journaled every day. I just really dove in and started to do my work. And I don't know how many days it was, but 3-4 days, I took myself on a date, and it was New Year's Eve, and I put my wig on and dressed up and went for supper by myself. And I needed that. I needed to learn to love myself, not to learn to love myself. I needed to love myself. And so that was just the beginning of this whole fucking journey for me. And I actually wrote a book called Another Way. There's Another Way, and it's more geared for kids and teens, but it is a workbook, and it's a great book about feeling our emotions. Pain, emotional pain is saying pay attention inward now, and I'm not taking credit for that. I heard Ian Van Zandt saying that years ago, and I've always loved it. So what I started to recognize was the only time that I felt like I didn't want to take my own life was when I was in meditation and also when I was in nature. I spent a lot of time going up to the lake. Where I live, there's a beautiful lake, like an hour away, an hour and a half. And I would go and I would sit at this lake all day and I would realize that I felt so fucking good and alive and so aligned with the spirit, with my heart, that I didn't want to die. And so I actually realized, I don't think it was me, I think it was more the spirit within me that really drew me to renting a place at the lake. Financially, I was ruined. I had lost everything because I wasn't able to work through my cancer journey. I had my own business. So at the time, I was getting into credit card debt. I didn't have any more savings, RRSPs. It was all gone. But I had my house. And I just knew that my only chance to make it was to sell my house and live off the equity. But weirdly, houses were not selling, like, at all. There were houses around my house that had been on the market forever, and they weren't selling. And so I listened to my heart, even though my kids were so upset they did not want to leave their house. And I put my house up for sale, and I weirdly just found this little ad on Facebook Marketplace for this little cabin. And I just thought, well, I can't rent a cabin and still have this house. It financially I couldn't do that. But I just really kept realizing that the only time I felt like not taking my own life was when I was at the lake. And it just started to make sense to me that I should be at the lake. But So this little ad just kept popping up into my mind and reminding me that it was there. And it was interesting because I looked at the ad again one day and I was like, holy fuck. This is actually the cabin that I used to walk by all the time. This tiny little cabin was at the lake that I used to take my kids to. So it was across the street from the campground. And at the end of the year, every year, I would go for a long walk and I would cry because we had to leave the lake. We had a camper and my ex-husband would bring the camper up and I would stay there with the kids. And at the end of the year, we would have to leave. And I was always so sad because I loved the lake so much. And I would walk around the campground and I noticed that that was the fucking cabin I used to walk by crying because I didn't want to leave the lake. And here there's an opportunity to rent this place. So I went and looked at the place and my heart just said rent it. And then I thought, okay, well, I can rent this place and maybe rent my house out. But I just knew that I had to be in nature. And so I rented the cabin. And 2 days later, my fucking house sold, which meant I had equity in my home that I could live off of. And so that's when I really started to do my work. I was living across from my favorite little campground. This cabin was so tiny. It was probably around 500 square feet. There was no basement. There was no nothing. So my daughter and I shared a bed. My son shared the closet with the washer and dryer. It was tiny, but it was so fucking magical. We had bunnies. Like, we had a bunny. We named him Jeffrey. He used to come every day between 4:30 and 5 o'clock to eat from his little bowl. We had deer on our deck, looking in the patio window every day. It was just this little piece of magic. And as I continued to walk and cry and feel and talk to the divine and write, it was a little bit over a month, probably 13, 14 months. I had actually been waiting for I had claimed disability. You can't claim disability for cancer if you don't die, or if it's not terminal. And because I had my own business, I didn't have any kind of insurance, but I could qualify for a payout for being severely depressed and having severe anxiety. But that also means if you have severe depression and severe anxiety, and it's not, what's the word? If it's a lifelong thing, I would have qualified for this disability. And I didn't know, it was so bad, and I was so suicidal, I just applied for it because my doctor also told me to. Anyway, it was over a year. They take so long to make these decisions, and so the payment that I was waiting for was about $15,000. And the nurse called me about a year and a bit later, and she was asking me these questions about how I was feeling, and I could have got the $15,000 payout if I would have lied, but I don't lie. And at this time, I could have really fucking used the money, but I was like, nope, I'm gonna go with my heart here, just like I always do. And I told her very proudly that I had healed my severe depression and severe anxiety on my own, in nature, journaling, meditating, feeling my heart, listening to my thoughts. And so I didn't get the payout, but you know what I got? I got this sense of, holy fuck, I did this. I had been suffering from depression all of those years and anxiety, and here I healed myself fucking naturally. I was just so excited about that. And so I was so excited to start working because I was going to start to work with people and help them do the same thing. And then COVID hit, so I'm not even going to go there because we all went through that. But the interesting part of this is I did the work to heal the severe depression and severe anxiety that I had had my whole adult life. And then I was sitting in my beautiful red chair meditating, and I heard this voice. This was March of 2021. This voice told me to go to the bathroom and check my breasts. And I'm like, why would I do that? That's fucking weird. And I did, and I didn't see anything. And I was like, well, okay, so here's my crazy mind starting again, giving me something to worry about. Now I'm worried about my boobs. Like, what's the problem here? And the next morning I was meditating on the same red chair, and there was a voice that said, go to the doctor. And I thought, what the fuck is going on right now? I didn't even know if my doctor was taking clients because of all the shutdowns. And I went, and he was like, nope, there's no cancer here, you're fine, like nothing to worry about. Because my tumor was actually really high. See, what I used to do when I went to the gym is I would take my phone and I would put it in my sports bra. And that's the exact place that I got my tumor. So was it really breast cancer? I don't fucking know, but there was a big tumor there. And so what he did is he sent me, so it was not in the regular place. So he didn't feel it during the examination, but he did send me for more tests. And that's when they saw the tumor. And it was fast moving and aggressive, and they said it was triple negative breast cancer. So then I needed 16 rounds of chemo, and I ended up getting, they took the tumor out after the chemo, and then they said that they cut into another cancer, so I had a double mastectomy. That was just a whole fucking shit show. But anyway, the point of this is, when I was diagnosed with cancer the second time, I was like, what the fuck is happening here? Like, and I didn't even tell this part of the story. I'm living in this little cabin. It literally felt like a piece of heaven to me. I loved it there. It was the most peaceful, beautiful place. For like 10 out of 12 months of the year, we were alone. And in this camp, like this whole area we were alone, because at the lake, nobody goes to the lake in the wintertime, or even fall or spring. So it was perfect because I love being alone. And which is a big thing, because I didn't love being alone. Remember, I was addicted to dating, right? So that was a huge thing for me. But yeah, so I was so upset. Okay, so what happened is my landlord came and told me that the prices were really high, and real estate agents had been contacting him, and he was going to list the cabin, which meant he was going to sell the cabin. Which meant I didn't have any fucking place to live, because, my finances were so destroyed. Nobody in their right mind would have ever given me a mortgage. So what am I going to do? I hadn't started working yet, because after COVID, I tried to start my business before COVID, but I do hands-on healing, and I taught conscious breathing. Can't do that in a mask, and it was illegal for me to touch people. So I couldn't work. So what the fuck was I supposed to do, was my question. So my landlord said he was going to sell the cabin, and then 2 days later is when I found out I had breast cancer. So I was like, well, this is fucking great. So that's when I wrote my other book. It's called Here with God. And the first chapter in that book was called What the Fucking Fuck. Because that's all I could think of, is what the fucking fuck. Like, I literally just got through this, and now I have a way worse cancer. It's like triple negative, fast moving, aggressive. The tumor had doubled in size within a month. What the fuck? And then I found out that I needed 16 rounds of chemo. 3 rounds of that shit almost killed me. I shouldn't call it shit, because it saved my life, but 3 rounds almost killed me. And then I found out I needed 16. So that's when I started to write that book, because it was so hard for me to come to terms with how the fuck am I going to do this again? Like, how am I going to do this again? I'm still on my own. You know, the world was all shut down, so that meant that as I was going through the chemo treatments, I had to homeschool my kids because I didn't want them to go to school with the shit that was going on. They didn't want to go to school. So anyway, I guess long story short, I didn't even know what I was going to sit down and talk about today, but my point of all of this is me writing my books, I think, saved my life. Not only did I write books, I actually made a podcast every day. I talked about my journey. You know, I talked about my journey because what we start to realize when we're going through a hard time is we have loving people in our lives. I do have loving people in my life, but people in our lives don't understand what it's like to go through these things. And what I see now that I didn't really see before is how hard it is on our family members when we're diagnosed with something life-threatening, when we're going through a really, really hard time, how hard it is for our parents and our loved ones to deal with that. My poor mom had to watch me go through, like, in 6 years I was actually diagnosed with 6 fucking cancers. 3 of them were skin cancer, so that wasn't a big deal. Well, it was. It hurt like a son of a bitch, but they weren't life-threatening. I guess one of them could have been. So 4 of my cancers could have been life-threatening. 4 out of 6. And my mom had to watch me go through all of this. And she ended up dying suddenly in 2022, which is another fucking part of my story. But our families are trying so hard to deal themselves that they're not always there for us, even though they are, right? And so I feel like it's very important, and that's why I want to use my time and my platforms and build platforms where I can have these conversations with people and encourage people that it's going to be okay. Yeah, it's going to fucking hurt sometimes. But I want to start to share what I learned. And like I said when I started this and sat down, what I feel like my fucking superpower is dealing with challenges. And like I said, I would have asked for that. I would have asked for 1,017 other jobs other than be the queen of facing challenges. But here I am, having faced all of these challenges, being at the point where I'm like, yeah, I'm never going to blow smoke up your ass and tell you it's not going to hurt. And I'm never going to tell you that it's all going to fucking work out and be perfect. There's no such thing as perfect. But what I am going to tell you is there will be a point, if you keep on keeping on, there will always be a point where you stop and look back and say, fuck, I can see what that did for me. My mom dying was the hardest thing I've ever gone through. She died suddenly. She was my best friend. You know, we really, really bonded through my cancer journeys. My mom was one of the greatest humans that I had ever met. She was everyone's favorite person. And so for her to die suddenly it seemed very, very unfair. It was very, very hard. Yet, had she not died, sorry, I have to press a button here. Anyway, sorry, there's something coming up on the screen here. I don't know how to do this. Okay, whoops, I guess I have to move this puzzle piece. Okay, that's not working. Anyway, what I realized through my mom dying is how strong of a belief that I hold now about the love that the divine is. And we all get to call it something different. We can call it God, call it divine. I don't care what you call it. What matters is that we connect to it. And I'll just tell this quick story before I end. I didn't know my mom was dying. I just knew she was sick, and we were trying to get her to a hospital. But they told us the hospitals were full. Don't bother bringing her in because no one's going to see her. So we were trying to make these plans to get her to a different city, to a different hospital. And I had cooked supper, and I realized, okay, I'm packing my bags. We're taking her somewhere else. We might be gone for a couple days. So I was cleaning up my kitchen, and I realized I need to put all this stuff in the garbage. So I went out to my garbage to throw everything out, and when I shut my gate, I realized that I had been connecting to God in my heart, but I hadn't been connecting to God out there. And what I hadn't done is ask God to save my mom's life. And so I stopped, and I put my hand on my heart, and I looked up, and I said, please save my mom. I didn't think she was going to die. So I probably didn't say it like that, but however I said it was like, please help my mom. And all of a sudden, this incredible light and love and peace washed through me. I felt it in it's like I could feel every cell in my body, even though I couldn't. I was so present. I felt this magical feeling, and it lasted for weeks. And what I realized later is that that was the exact time that my mom died. And I felt it. And that also showed me that if that's how much peace I felt as she was dying, imagine how much she felt. And that's always gotten me through. So even though I would do anything to bring my mom back, what it's done for me is shown me the truth about the love and the peace that the divine is. And so I will never ever question that there is a divine power and that there's divine love. I will never ever question it. You could argue to the death. I wouldn't even argue with people about it because I wouldn't waste my time, because I know it's true. And that has changed my life. So yes, I would bring her back, but I'm also grateful for the experience. So that is what I had to say today, I guess. I wasn't expecting to say any of this. So I just want to thank you for joining in, and I'm just going to sit down every day and do more guided work where I'm, more encouraging you and helping you feel your emotions and listen to your thoughts. My website is letlovelead.ca. I've got Zoom calls that I'm starting to do now. I've got my podcasts, like I said, and my books. So I guess I'm going to become a vessel for people. And I want, like I said, to me the word heal means hold them, encourage them, accept them, and love them. And that is what I want to start spreading around the world in any way that I can. Is just really helping people get into the moment, connecting to their heart, breathing, feeling your emotions, noticing your thoughts, and really, really moving through. We have challenges throughout every single day. They may be, harder challenges, easier challenges, but we can get through them all. And I feel like the biggest part of it is to do it in a way that you don't feel alone. So find those people that inspire you to never, ever, ever give up. So anyway, I just want to thank you. I will talk to you. I'm just trying to figure out this puzzle piece thing.